In 1987, Predator was released. It's considered to be one of Arnold's best movies, besides Terminator 2, besides Total Recall, besides True Lies. Predator was a movie written by the Thomas brothers and directed by John McTiernan, the director of Die Hard. It's an action sci-fi slasher movie about an elite unit of badass mercenaries who encounter an alien that hunts humans for sports. It's considered to be among the top-tier science fiction action movies of all time, and it was the beginning of the long-running Predator franchise. Predator has a fair amount of coverage on YouTube, so for now I'm not going to go in depth with that. I just have this memory of watching it around the age where I started getting into these kind of movies. Action, sci-fi, and horror, and I really liked that it was kind of a blend of all three genres. Like, you had the badass shoot-'em-up aspect, but then you had the science fiction aspect and the horror/slasher aspect because of how the characters were killed. Surface level, yes, this was a macho shoot-'em-up action flick, but at the end of the day, the main hero, played by Arnold, had to use his mind and problem-solving to outsmart the alien in order to beat it. The Predator itself has distinct advantages both biologically, i.e. being bigger, stronger, and faster than humans, as well as technological advantages like a cloaking device, energy weapons, and the ability to see via detecting heat signatures. And if all of that fails, it has a fucking nuke attached to it.
Ugly motherfucker.
I thought the Predator was just such a fucking cool creature. I love Arnold, and the supporting cast in Predator was great. Jesse Ventura has a line that I find to be absolutely hilarious, but it seems a bit too risque to say these days given the climate.
Bunch of slack-jawed faggots around here. This stuff will make you a goddamn sexual tyrannosaurus.
It's a pretty basic movie. We don't really learn any more about the Predator creature than we have to. We basically just find out that it's a weird reptilian-looking alien with advanced technology that hunts people for sport. The movie was a major hit, making roughly $98.3 million against its $15 to $8 million budget, and it became an overnight franchise. There were toy lines, a comic series, including the first ever crossover with the Alien franchise, which, as you may know from my Alien vs. Predator reviews, that became a much bigger deal later on, and through that there was an eventual demand for a sequel. But where to go in regards to a sequel to Predator? The first one was relatively open and shut. It didn't exactly leave room for a sequel, but it didn't quite shut the door on it either. Shortly after Predator was released, the Thomas brothers were commissioned to write a script, and Joel Silver brought in director Stephen Hopkins to direct, as he was impressed with Hopkins' work on A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, which, okay. Stephen Hopkins, I don't know if I want to call him a good director or a bad director, because he focuses a lot on visuals and effects and, moments in movies, but he doesn't really put much into the story or plot. And that is fine to a certain degree, but, I can't ignore the fact that Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5 is not one of the best movies in the series. If it wasn't for Freddy's Dead and the remake, it would likely be considered the worst one in the series, save for the awesome motorcycle scene. Hopkins probably could have done anything but directing. He could have been a cinematographer, a director of photography or something. His visions are great, the stuff he puts on screen looks really good, but then when it comes to actually executing a narrative, he's very questionable. Early in development, the idea was to have Arnold returning from the first movie and teaming up with Patrick Swayze to take down the Predator. But things shifted. Swayze got injured on the set of Roadhouse, and Arnold didn't want to return to the movie because they wanted him to be more antagonistic. That and Arnold demanded way too much money, so using Joel Silver's connections, they got Danny Glover and Gary Busey. Steven Seagal was also considered for the lead role, which would become the Mike Harrigan character, but Seagal wanted the character to be like a CIA operative, psychologist or something, who was also a martial arts expert in his spare time, and Stephen Hopkins felt that the character of Harrigan should be more like an everyman type character. And in the end, he ends up being an LAPD detective. Early on, it was decided decided that this movie would take place in an urban setting, and for some inexplicable reason, it was also decided to set the movie in the not-too-distant future of 1997. I guess at this point in time, they kind of had the idea that the Predator shows up every 10 years because the first movie took place in 87, but considering it's later revealed that there are multiple clans of Predators, it's likely that there's some sort of rotating schedule between the clans, so I think they're on Earth a lot more frequently than 10 years, but anyway. Which raises the question, like, how do these clans, like, interact with each other? Because I know there's some clans that are, like, friendly, there's some clans that don't like each other, there's Predators that are considered dishonorable, whatever. Like, is there, like, a red phone between the clans? Like, if one clan is gonna schedule, like, a hunt on the Earth, do they have to, like, fill out a form or something? And then it's like, yeah, don't come to this planet while we're there, we're doing our thing. We can fit you in for, like, the fall of 1996 or something. Like, how does this work? Joel Silver basically made it pretty easy to bring guys over from Lethal Weapon. Like, they got Danny Glover as the lead without a problem, and then Gary Busey was brought in as Peter Keyes, who's like a secondary antagonist who masquerades as a DEA agent, but is later revealed to be part of an elite team of CIA agents tasked with tracking and capturing the Predator for research. And it goes without saying that the Peter Keyes character was originally going to be Arnold returning as Dutch from the first movie, but due to the disputes that I mentioned above, that was changed. Aside from Danny Glover and Gary Busey, the supporting cast includes Ruben Blades, Bill Paxton, Robert Davi, Maria Alonso, Calvin Lockhart, and Adam Baldwin. The role of the Predator was reprised by Kevin Peter Hall from the first movie, but its vocalizations were recast with Hal Royal, who replaced Peter Cullen.
Ugly mother.
And the Predator talks a lot more in this movie, so I don't know, like, if that was needed, or if they just, like, if Peter Cullen wasn't available, but yeah, they have the Predator using his mimic thing a lot more in this. And I think the oddest thing about Predator 2 is its setting. Predator 2 takes place in the not-so-distant future at the time of 1997. The N64 was out, Stone Cold Steve Austin was well on his way to becoming the future of the WWF, and oh yeah, there were full-on fucking street wars happening in the streets of LA between the Colombians and the Jamaicans voodoo posse. The future depicted in Predator 2 is very Verhoeven-esque. It's like borderline dystopian, but the future itself is a parody of at-the-time modern-day trends. Predator 2's 1997 shows us warfare in the streets, cops being outmanned and outgunned by drug cartels, brutal heat waves, Morton Downey Jr. regularly on TV. 1997 of the Predator universe is bleak and hopeless.
Drought-ridden Los Angeles welters in agonizing heat. Drug lords wage bloody warfare in the streets. Yet another open conflict. Oh, fuck this! Get me out of here!
Now, the character of Mike Harrigan, who's played by Danny Glover, is supposed to be an everyman-type character, and this is shown by having him rush into the middle of the shootout in his car, doing some crazy shit to get the wounded police officers out of there, and then he proceeds to just cut through the entire cartel and be an action hero for the entire movie. He's not as outwardly badass as Arnold, but he certainly does exceed the everyman label that Hopkins was enforcing, but whatever, it's a movie. During the whole first shootout, the Predator takes note and finds it to be a good time to get some hunting on. I love how over the top the Colombians are. Like, they're just fucking blasted on cocaine. El Scorpio here makes Tony Montana look like a well-adjusted, sober individual, and it's just fucking comical. It's almost like a cartoon. In this first action sequence, it establishes that the Predators sees Mike Harrigan as a prime hunting target as it witnesses his work in the streets. And then after killing all the Colombians, the Predator watches Mike Harrigan go to work on El Scorpio. Now the funny thing is like, in the first movie, Anna like establishes that she kinda knows what the Predator is, and it's implied that like, the people of South America have probably had several encounters with the Predator, as in most cases the Predator prefers a hot or tropical environment for hunting. And also aside from that, it's heavily implied that both indigenous peoples as well as people from the Caribbean are somewhat aware of what the Predator is. And the movie Prey makes it very clear that the Predator's history is more rooted in the New World, hence why these groups would likely be more aware of it. I like to think that El Scorpio like knows exactly what the fuck is going on based on that, but he's also completely whacked out of his gourd on blow. So he's just like confused and scared and kinda knows what's going on, but not really. And this is kind of similar to the thing where, like, the language barrier prevents El Scorpio from communicating to Harrigan that there's something running around, and he ends up getting shot. Although Harrigan does take note of the fact that El Scorpio was aiming at something that cannot be seen at this time. So here we go. It's already set the stage for the movie. Predator 2 is going to be Predator versus Murtaugh, I mean Harrigan. Danny Glover plays his regular cop character, but instead of being like the authority figure we get in Lethal Weapon or the unhinged, obsessed detective we get in Saw, he's kinda down the middle. He's clearly a renegade cop who busts asses and pisses off his superiors, but he's also seasoned and has quirks, such as being afraid of heights.
Oh God, oh God. That's all I need is birds. You can do it.
Now, when I see the hardcore stuff with the Tony Pope character, the first thing that comes to mind is like RoboCop, Total Recall, just Paul Verhoeven in general. Like, as I mentioned, the 1997 LA in the Predator universe is essentially a Paul Verhoeven movie. It's dystopian, it's hot, and there's a bunch of violence everywhere. And that's exactly what attracted the Predator for this hunt. In the opening scene, we meet Harrigan's crew, and then back at the precinct, we get introduced to Bill Paxton's Jerry Lambert character. A loudmouth wannabe smooth talker who transferred in from another precinct. And at first you think he's an asshole, but if half the first act didn't end up on the cutting room floor, we likely would have gotten way more development for him. The sad thing is, despite having a lot of his development cut, he's still more three-dimensional than most of the other supporting characters who have like no development in this cut of the film. And then we also meet Gary Busey as Peter Keyes, who I spoke about earlier. Now, usually Gary Busey is a treat because he's a fucking maniac, but we really don't get to see him go full Busey until near the end of the movie. He only pops up for a few short scenes in the first act, and he's relatively restrained for those. So the first portion of Predator 2 plays out more like a mystery. The cops want to solve the Predator murders, which started with the Colombians and then continued with the Jamaican voodoo posse. And yes, I need to address this whole little kerfuffle because it does come off as kind of insensitive, but there's a reason for this, at least from a producer's standpoint.
Fucking voodoo magic, man.
So voodoo isn't really a Jamaican thing like at all. That's like a Haitian thing, and the Jamaicans do have kind of an equivalent of voodoo that is Obeah, I don't know how it's pronounced, but it's really not voodoo. I've read a few conflicting stories on this. The first story is that initially the Jamaicans were supposed to be Rastafarian, which they fit the bill for based on how they dress and how they smoke weed all the time.
You want some ganja, man?
But I've also heard that in the early development stages, the Jamaicans were actually supposed to be a Haitian gang. The main reasons for why they weren't Haitian or Rastafarian was because the producers didn't think that the general audiences would know what either of those things are. So instead they just went with this like imaginary Jamaican voodoo gang who wouldn't exist.
Fucking voodoo magic, man.
In general, Predator 2 feels a lot sleazier than the first one, and that's because they have a slasher director doing it. But we get full frontal nudity, we get a lot more graphic violence, and the movie itself is a lot less centered on the aspect of the protagonist figuring out how to beat the Predator and seems more focused on the detective story, with plenty of breaks in between for special effects shots and shots of the Predator killing people. But then this mystery aspect turns into a sort of it's personal story when Harrigan's friend Danny is killed by the Predator while investigating the murder scene at the Colombian guy's house. Problem is, we've seen the first movie by this point, we already know that it's a Predator doing this, and while it is fun to a degree to see the cops figure it out, it takes up a little too much time from the movie. The big saving grace is the expansion of the Predator as a character as well as its arsenal and the upped violence. In the first movie, the Predator had its plasma caster and its wrist blade. In this movie, in addition to those two items, it has a spear, a net gun, the smart disc, this other wrist firing weapon, so so it has a lot more stuff to work with, and it gives it some pretty solid kills. Some solid kills that would have been so much better if things had played out a little differently production-wise, but I'm gonna get to that a little bit later. The first two acts of this movie, while coherent, can sometimes feel a little bit disjointed. Like, certain characters seem like they're supposed to have development, but they just don't. The only one who gets any sort of an arc besides Mike Harrigan is the Jerry Lambert character, whose character is a joker and an asshole the entire movie, with his whole thing being that he claims everything he's assigned to do is his specialty.
Hey, don't worry, Lieutenant. Surveillance is my specialty.
Okay, Lieutenant, pluck is my specialty. Now, if you'll excuse me, Lieutenant, I got some serious police work to attend to.
Hey, do you mind? It's my sister. Hey, what? Oh, you're not my sister, are you?
Like, he doesn't endear himself to Lenora, he tries to hit on her the first day at the office, which, but then he kind of comes around throughout the movie, and then right before the climax, there's a scene where Lambert and Leona are on a subway train, there's a bunch of guns pulled because of gang activity, and then the Predator jumps into the train and just starts butchering people, and this scene is pretty fucking awesome. I wish they could have shown a little more of this. I think they might have shot more of this, but again, I'll get to that later. And Jerry's whole arc ends with him sacrificing himself so that Leona can get the subway patrons off of that train.
Come on, motherfucker!
Want some candy?
Let's dance! That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Thereby making Bill Paxton the first of two actors to be killed on screen by a Predator, a Xenomorph, and a Terminator. Although I've always debated as to whether or not he was killed by the T-800 in the first Terminator, like he kind of just gets thrown into a gate, but anyway. The problem is it feels like everything that's leading up to the climax is just kind of there. Like, I guess there is a build, we do get a scene where Harrigan visits Danny's grave and it kind of expands on their friendship a little bit and adds to the whole it's personal aspect of the story. And it does give us a little bit of Predator development because the Predator is stalking Harrigan and it shows that he's able to recognize a kid using a toy gun, which I always thought was kind of a cute way of showing that the Predator isn't just some mindless killer, but that he assesses and recognizes what's a threat to him or not and acts on that.
Want some candy?
But it feels like it's events occurring in sequence more so to get them out of the way. There's not a lot of substance to the first few acts of the movie besides when we're following Harrigan. Like, all the supporting characters seem like they're kind of just there to be killed or come into some sort of problem. While I enjoy the violence and the RoboCop-esque setting, it does drift a little bit, although I will say the King Willie part is pretty cool. He gets slaughtered, but the effect they use when the Predator hits the water and you see his feet hitting the water while the cloak device is malfunctioning looks really fucking cool.
His foundation lied in the holy mountain. Selah.
And yeah, while filming the alleyway scenes, it was apparently a fucking nightmare. They found, like, real dead bodies in the dumpster, and people living in the buildings, like, around the alleyway were throwing, like, feces at the crew. Because Los Angeles in the fucking late 80s, early 90s was a shithole. The effects in this movie, which, may I remind you, predate CGI, have a tendency to look fucking phenomenal. Predator 2 may very well be one of the best looking movies of the early 90s. Now, I think the main problem with why the first two acts of this movie feel the way they do is because this movie had so much footage that ended up on the cutting room floor. There's like whole arcs that are missing. The whole thing with Leona's pregnancy is cut. The whole aspect with Mike Harrigan and Robert Davi's character Heineman was supposed to have a whole thing where they used to be friends, then Heineman turned into a dick when he got promoted. Like, that's all cut. Robert Davi is hardly in the fucking movie. The only reference that remains of that arc is after the subway massacre when Heineman is trying to deal with the press and Harrigan blows him off. And there were also supposed to be numerous scenes that developed the supporting cast, aside from the Leona pregnancy thing. It's just these little touches that they removed that kind of hurt it in the long run. And furthermore, the hardcore news segments were supposed to be longer and more extensive to kind of help frame the fictional 1997 Los Angeles that we see in this movie. And Peter Keyes was also supposed to get a little bit more screen time too. But hey, despite all the character development that they cut out of this movie, they still had time to pretty much just rip off the relationship of Hudson and Vasquez and use it for Jerry Lambert and Leona.
Hey!
Hey, are your balls okay?
Fine. How are yours?
While I'm here, furthermore, the movie was originally supposed to be far more violent and actually got an NC-17 rating, which, yeah, this movie is still pretty fucking violent, but a lot of it was cut down and trimmed out. This was still that era where the MPAA was cracking down on violence in movies pretty hard, and it's sad that this movie had to be a victim of that. So yeah, this movie, like, there's a lot to judge with Predator 2, but it does have a lot working against it because of all the cuts made to it. But despite all of this, despite the problems that the first and second acts have, and despite how the movie can feel somewhat slow or disjointed at times, it does have a lot of entertainment value, and that's mainly to be found in the special effects, the violence that they could actually show, as well as the characters. It just feels like they sacrificed a little too much and it hurt the film. But I would argue that Predator 2 has a better climax than Predator 1. So after the subway massacre, Harrigan follows the Predator to the slaughterhouse that it's been nesting in, where he's confronted by Keyes. Peter Keyes has been really sketchy the entire time, and this is where we get the reveal that he's part of that elite unit, which I spoke about earlier, and he has this whole plan where they're gonna capture a Predator. And this plan has the team devise a way to ambush and capture the Predator using a freeze gun.
What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age!
The whole scene itself is very reminiscent of Aliens when the Marines first get to the hive. You have all these operatives in their special insulated suits that hide their body heat signatures, and they're ready to go, but they didn't count on the fact that the Predator's mask does have alternative visual spectrums. I'm not an expert in this shit, but it cycles through a few different visual modes. You got your infrared, then you get this other one, and then you have one that looks like the Predator's unmasked vision from the end of the first movie, and then to something that I assume allows it to see like spectrum lights or whatever, which clues in the Predator to the fact that there's a bunch of guys with flashlights wandering around. The CIA goes through extensive prep time to prepare for this ambush, including using a dust-like substance to disrupt the cloak, and it all just goes extremely poorly when the Predator figures it out. To further compare this to Aliens, they pretty much have the same interaction with Harrigan and Adam Baldwin that Gorman and Ripley had, where Adam Baldwin is freezing up and Harrigan's telling him to get the guys out of there.
It's moving away from them.
He sees them, Garber. Your boys have been made.
Sir, it's circling around behind them.
Get them out, Garber. They're walking into a trap. Get them out! Keith. He's right behind the third floor structure. Right there.
Who is this? Clear the line.
He sees the damn light. Turn them off. Turn them off!
Which then leads to Harrigan deciding to go in there to save the day, and honestly, one of the complaints about this movie is that Danny Glover actually kicks the Predator's ass worse than Arnold did. And yeah, he does kick the Predator's ass. He does get his ass kicked a little bit too, but he does a lot better against the City Hunter than an elite team of ex-Special Forces guys did against the Jungle Hunter. I would say this is a somewhat valid complaint because while Harrigan is a seasoned police detective, he isn't fucking Dutch the genetic mutant with the Special Forces training. The only thing genetically mutated about Danny Glover in this movie is his fucking giant pants, shout out to Colin Cunningham, which may or may not be because he was going to be moving around a lot in this movie, and I think they gave him extensively baggy pants to hide his monster dong or something from flopping around during the action sequences. Like, they really don't go below the waist on the camera with Danny Glover, so I don't know, maybe he's packing.
Whoops! I dropped my monster condom that I use for my Magnum dong. I'm getting too old for this shit.
Anyway, that's enough about fucking Danny Glover's giant cock. The common complaint about how well Harrigan fares against the Predator compared to Arnold is, well, a common one. Arnold gets his fucking ass beat 1v1, but Danny Glover kind of fucks the Predator up. And granted, Danny Glover holds on to his guns and doesn't try to go 1v1 with a knife and traps. He comes in, he saves Keyes, well, not really, because Peter Keyes still gets blasted with a plasma caster and then cut in half with the smart disc in a scene that was horribly cut down. Like, where the fuck did his top half go? But anyway, yeah, no, Danny Glover kind of kicks the Predator's ass, takes his mask off, manages to cut his arm off with his own smart disc, and then eventually does defeat the Predator in single combat. I'll get back to that in a minute, but this whole chase scene kind of almost makes up for the cut down first few acts. Like, I don't think the first portion of the movie is bad, but it always seemed incomplete, and later finding out how much was cut confirmed that. But we get Danny Glover being fucking hilarious and badass at the same time.
Okay, pussy face. It's your move.
The whole rooftop chase sequence with Glover and the Predator is fucking awesome. It's exciting, the set pieces look good, and we get some humor thrown in because there's this whole thing where the Predator heals itself in some old woman's bathroom and then like accosts her, runs through her apartment screaming, and then Danny Glover comes in after, and it's just all fucking great.
It's alright, I'm a cop.
I don't think he gives a shit.
And then it all culminates in the final showdown on the Predator's ship where Danny Glover reigns victorious, only to be confronted by like 6 Predators who are all played by members of the 1989-1990 LA Lakers. So I'm gonna get to my justification about why it's not that big of a problem that Harrigan did this well against the Predator compared to Arnold, but I do want to talk about how important this whole spaceship sequence is. It's pretty much responsible for the lore that has been carried into the Predator franchise, like from comics to video games to movie sequels. Never mind the fact that there's a xenomorph skull on display, but initially we didn't learn too much about the Predator in the first movie. But this movie kind of starts the whole thing with their culture and how they operate in groups and the whole clan system and that there's an elder. It also establishes the Code of Honor. Since Harrigan defeated the Predator fair and square, he's congratulated for his victory, the Predators don't kill him, and the elder even gives him a gift. And he's allowed to go on his way. And this is the first movie to imply that the Predator has been visiting Earth for an undefined period of time, which was later defined with 2022's Prey, confirming that it's been appearing on Earth since at least the early colonial times. Now here's the thing, to go back to my whole Danny Glover beating the Predator thing isn't that bad. In supplemental materials and stuff in the script, there's the implication that the City Hunter was a young blood predator who was on his first major hunt alone, as the Jungle Hunter was clearly a more seasoned veteran, which explains why Harrigan was able to defeat the City Hunter. It's also worth noting that Harrigan got a little bit of a rundown on how the Predator actually worked, whereas Dutch was kind of still going in blind, and like even though he had figured a few things out, like was not fully filled in like Harrigan was. Harrigan had a lot more working for him in his fight than Dutch did. So had Harrigan been up against a veteran Predator, he likely wouldn't have done as well, but under these circumstances, which, you know, obviously couldn't be explained due to how much was cut down, it does make this make a little more sense that Danny Glover beats a Predator. But nevertheless, the movie leaves itself open to a sequel that we wouldn't get for 20 years.
God damn it, we came so close!
Don't worry, asshole. You'll get another chance.
As a movie, Predator 2 is just okay, but as an overall addition to a franchise, it contributes so much to the series that it kind of gives it a little bit boost long term. I do like Predator 2, but I'm not going to pretend like it's comparable to the first one or even Predators in terms of quality. Sure, it's better than The Predator, but The Predator was shit. There's certainly issues with Predator 2, many of which come from the fact that so much of the movie was trimmed down both before and after shooting, so as a result, we get a movie that feels kind of incomplete, and at the time, Predator 2 was not very well liked by critics or by audiences. It did make $57 million worldwide against its $30 million budget, so it technically turned a profit. It wasn't a bomb, but it would quickly become the forgotten installment. It would air on TV from time to time, but I never really heard too much about it. When I was in the 5th or 6th grade, so roughly 11, 12 years old, I became a huge fan of the Alien movies and the Predator movies. Like, my first early horror experience, which technically Predator isn't horror, but whatever, kind of feels like a slasher film. Alien and Predator are really like my early exposure to horror. Like, I know a lot of kids who watched actual horror movies young. I kind of stayed away from it as a kid. My parents were a little bit sketchy about letting me watch horror movies because a lot of them were just violence and nudity, but nevertheless, my parents did allow me to watch sci-fi horror movies and R-rated action movies, so it evens out. I became absolutely enamored with both the Alien and Predator franchises. Well, the first Predator movie. I didn't actually see Predator 2. Eventually I got to the point where it's like, okay, I have to see the second Predator movie. I have vague memories of seeing bits and pieces of Predator 2. I think it aired on the Space Network. I remember walking in on my cousin watching it, like during the slaughterhouse scene. But I didn't actually get to sit down and watch it until a couple years later. I remember one Saturday I was with my mom and we went to Zeller's and I saw Predator 2 was in the bargain bin for like $9.99 $1.99 on DVD, so we grabbed it and we watched it and I enjoyed it, but it never really stuck out to me as much as the first one. But then as I got deeper into the lore of the Alien and the Predator through the comic book movies and through the video games, I learned to appreciate it a lot more. And eventually I came around on Predator 2 based on the ideas that it introduced for the series as well as the last act, which I still genuinely think is fucking awesome. Over the years, Predator 2 would undergo sort of a reassessment amongst the public, mostly after the Predator franchise made a comeback with Predators and The Predator and Prey. It's interesting what time can do for a movie. Initially, Predator 2 was looked at as the black sheep of the franchise, and nowadays it's looked at a lot more fondly, mainly because the Predator was butchered in reshoots and came out looking like shit. But I think the reason why Predator 2 is more appreciated these days is because it codified the Predator character in a way that is still used to this day. The clans, the honor code, the elder, the overall characterization of the Predator race comes from this movie more so than it does the first. In an era where people are really obsessed with world building and lore, this kind of plays itself better. It's kind of safe to say that Predator 2 might have actually just been a little too ahead of its time. And on top of that, the visuals in this movie are like, it's fucking loaded. Like, they look so good. There's so many iconic Predator shots in this movie. It's ironic that this movie codified the Predator as a character, but its reception and slight disappointment at the box office put the entire Predator franchise, at least cinematically, on ice for 14 years, with the Predator only appearing once again during a crossover with the Alien franchise. The Predator had survived that entire time in video games and comic books. And then finally, 20 years later in 2010, we've got a third Predator movie. To wrap this up, at the end of the day, I think Predator 2 is a flawed movie from a narrative standpoint, but all the superficial bits of it exceed the first one. The special effects, the overall look and feel of the movie. I wouldn't say it's as good as the first Predator, but it definitely has its positives and it is enjoyable. It's just like all the special effects, the violence, the action sequences are like a candy coating over a bitter pill, because with what was cut out, we don't get a lot of substance narrative-wise. But Stephen Hopkins excels at making a movie an experience, and the visuals, the action, the violence, and even some of the characters themselves are pretty solid. It's a case of what it does right, it does right. What it does wrong, it does wrong. But despite what it does wrong, what it does right does make the movie a generally fun experience. It's ironic that this movie gained a stigma for damaging the franchise due to its poor performance, but with its reassessment and the general quality of the Predator franchise, besides The Predator, it's now looked at in a much more positive light. But I still think it's worth noting that this movie would likely have all negativity pulled off of it if Fox, or rather Disney, would collab with Stephen Hopkins on some sort of a director's or extended cut. Something that restored the deleted footage and maybe brought the extended shots of violence back. Maybe this is more so an I have to know type thing, but honestly, with Alien 3 getting reassessed after its extended cut, after being the kind of black sheep for years, and with the general concept of other films that may have gotten a mixed reaction at first but got a better verdict when their extended cuts dropped, it couldn't hurt this movie's reputation if they did do an extended cut. But at the end of the day, it's really all a matter of if it would be viable to put money into doing that. What would be the benefit to anybody besides the fucking cult fan base? With physical media kinda just not really being that much of a thing anymore, I don't think they'd be able to sell that. Like, they could do this on Disney Plus or whatever, Hulu if you're in the States, but like, would it be worth the effort and the money they put in to do so? But in all honesty, I want to see it. It's like the Batman Forever Schumacher cut. Like, I need to know. I need to know how much more fucking violent this already very violent movie is. I also need to know what the fuck they were gonna do with these other characters to kind of make them more easily invested in. But I guess it's kind of one of those things I'm probably never gonna know. It's like the Event Horizon thing. Like, sure, there's a fucking brutal cut of Event Horizon that we're never gonna see. And yeah, I don't know if these fucking extra violent shots were, left to fucking deteriorate in a salt mine, but if it's out there, I at least would like it as a featurette. I don't know. I'm curious as to how violent this movie is at the end of the day. Like, what the fuck did they have to cut? But I get the feeling that that's gonna just be one of those questions that I never get an answer to. Also, before I wrap this up, I kind of forgot to mention this / discovered this factoid like midway through production of the video. But something that caught my interest while I was reading up on this movie was the fact that the Predator suits all went missing after production. Yeah, like there were 9 Predators at the end of this movie, and all 9 costumes like vanished without a trace. Which really begs the question, like, who the fuck would steal 9 Predator costumes? What could you possibly do with 9 Predator costumes? Is this one of those things that like we're gonna find this out like probably in the next few years, like where these suits went, or is it just like forever a mystery? Did Danny Glover just like see an opportunity and decide, hey, I'm gonna make off with fucking like 9 Predator costumes?
Motherfucker, you've been calling me for 40 years straight. I didn't take no damn Predator costumes. I'm getting too old for this shit.
What are your thoughts on Predator 2? Let me know in the comments, and hashtag release the NC-17 cut or whatever. If you like that video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, share me with your friends, like the video, comment, all that good shit, and I'll see you next time.
Hate the subway at rush hour. You know, it's hard enough to find a seat, and if you find one, someone's either pissed in it or throwing up all over it.
And at this price, it's the only way to travel, T.O.